Hello.
How's it going, guys?
It's going good. How are you?
Good, good, good. You hear me okay?
Yeah.
Good.
Sorry about the
Look,
wait.
it's a
We had
car.
a situation trying to set everything up here.
Sure.
All right. Welcome, everybody. We are here, Fight and Debate Podcast. As you guys know, UFC 313. Tonight, we have Alex Pereira, the reigning light heavyweight champion, taking on Magomed Ankalaev. But before that, we have Agent Sebastian, the Cart Narc, on here today.
What a transition.
So first question that I have is just, can you tell all the viewers like how you got this started, becoming the Cart Narc, and like just your story about how it all began for you?
It's pretty simple. It's not as glamorous as some may hope for. With like dark carts and people things falling out of the sky and parents getting killed by flying carts and all that stuff. But just an observation of, hey man, why don't people take their carts back? And I'm not the first person to have made this observation. It's been going on for decades, but I guess I'm the first person to like go out and do something about it, and to make an organization behind it. And it just sort of spiraled from there. I just started asking people, "Hey, what's going on?" They started flipping out. Not all, but some. And here we are today, just from just step by step, interaction after interaction.
Hmm. Okay.
All right. Noah, do you have a question?
Yeah. So, do you ever think that you go like for both sides? Do you get their side of the story sometime if like they do not put their carts away?
Yeah, because at least initially, that was one of the main like rebuttals was like, you don't know what their story is, right?
Right. Right.
That's kind of gone away over time, but it's a good question. Um, and that's the thing is because people will then I'll get emails and DMs from all over the place where people will say, well, they could have just had, their mom could have died or blah blah blah. But in all of my encounters, I always ask them. I always say, hey, and there have been a few times, almost never, but there have been a few times where people come up with a rational, logical excuse.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who do that aren't mad or angry. They're just like, hey, man, this is going on. One time, very recently, I haven't this lady. I wasn't, being mean to her or anything. She was a little older, but not that old. She left her cart out with like some trash in it too. And the
Mm-hmm.
cart return was right across the way, 10 steps the other way. And I kind of pointed at it and said, hey. And she said, oh, I'm so sorry. I can't leave my mom alone because she has dementia. I was like, totally okay. I wasn't angry at her. She wasn't angry at me. I said, hey, I'm sorry to have bothered you. Totally understand. Let me take it for you. Um, Another time happened where it was in Memphis where I was approaching from the opposite side of the car from where she was. And I get around and say, oh, hey, what's going on? Because I'm never like yelling and screaming at people. Um, and she said, oh, sorry, I got this boot on my foot. I couldn't see from the other side. She had a cast on her foot. She wasn't angry at me. I wasn't angry at her. Hey, no problem. Let me take that for you. So that there are very few, but a handful of a quote I don't say excuse. I'll say reasons because to
Mm-hmm.
me that's the difference. Because a reason
Yeah.
is an excuse essentially is a lie. An
Right.
excuse
Yeah.
is a reason that doesn't apply. An
Mm-hmm.
excuse is I can't do this because of this thing, but that's not true.
Right.
And so those are the only two times in the thousands of times I've talked to people where they're like, okay, I've got something going on. Because you hear my videos, they have 1,000 excuses, but
Right.
like one question about the excuse and it kind of falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that I wanted to ask was, I've seen like you wear the bulletproof vest in your videos. Can you go back to the day that you've mentioned where you had a weapon pulled on you, and like what was going through your head at that time, and has it changed
Thinking
your thinking on like
the Cart Narcs.
Well, that's a good question too. Yeah, it's happened twice actually.
Oh.
But one was real close. One was like if he had decided to shoot, I would have there would have been some Matrix style dodging involved. um,
Yeah.
But yeah, so the that was in Georgetown, Texas, I believe, which is north of Austin. And the guy, I approached him. He was in his work truck, so he said, which I believed. And he's back and forth. He understands what I'm saying. I'm talking about the cart. And then he sees the magnet. He's like, "You better not do that." He reaches down, I guess, wherever he had his 9mm, takes it out and racks the slide, which many people point out is a sign of a weak bitch move to not have one in the chamber.
Yeah.
It just so literally just last night I was watching some this veteran gun instructor, and he's talking about, it was a side issue, but since we're talking bulletproof vests and guns, he said, the people who don't carry one in the chamber in a semi-automatic pistol really need either not to be carrying a weapon or more training, because he points out that when you draw and now you have this extra step of racking the slide and so on and so forth. But the point to your original question, he does pull it out, racks the slide. Now it was in such a manner where he's seated in his work van. I'm on the opposite side speaking through an open window to him. So I have a really easy line of retreat back and away from his point of view. So even if he wanted to point it and shoot it at me, it would have been very tough for him. And plus, once you get outside of like 50 feet, no one's a good shot. Right. That's like, you get far enough away, they're not going to hit you. But after that, a cop in Baton Rouge sent me a bulletproof vest, which I wear a lot of times. And yeah, I always watch their hands. What are they? Because you see in other videos where people will open a trunk or they'll reach for something.
Yeah.
And guys have brought out, sticks and pepper spray, or sometimes they go for something. Most of the time, in fact, they go for something and there's nothing there. They're just trying to, scare me or whatever. But it definitely teaches me something about this that has to do with guns or knives or fists even, is you can't get in a fight with someone who's you're not in range to fight with, whatever their weapon is. So like people ask me, how many times have you gotten hit? Well, I don't walk right up to someone's face and get in the, you see this in like NFL stadiums, that classic match where dudes are like jawing at each other, or you see it in UFC weigh-ins where they're face to face. And at that range, no one has to. You see professional UFC fighters; they get slapped or whatever. No one has, especially coming from below your line of sight. No one has any kind of defense at that range. So I'm never ever in range of whatever they're presenting with me.
Interesting.
It's the best of my ability, anyway.
Yeah. So, when you're like putting like magnets or the suction cup flags, do you ever think that it's not a good idea to do it sometimes?
I hear what you say. Yeah, on that, like people have brought that up. Oh, that's too much. And to them, I say, well, we'll agree to disagree,
Right?
Because it's not a damaging thing. Some people will say, oh, well, if there are like, it can create micro scratches, and I've talked to many detailing and like actual car people about that, and it has to be sitting on there for like months and years over time to like or I have to like rub it in metal shavings and smear it on there, which I don't do obviously.
Right.
In fact, I clean them on every excursion.
Okay.
But what more folks see these days is that somehow that magnet is a magical like engine stopping device, because because some people do drive off, either they're confused or whatever, but other people it's just enough, and that's the whole point of the magnet or the flag with the suction mounting on it for today's aluminum and carbon fiber bodies, is it's saying, hey, it's like what you did is a distraction or possibly damaging to other people, or an inconvenience at the very least for other people. I'm going to inconvenience you in a lesser way, but it's friggin' golden rule. We're all monkeys here. And that's the main point. So that's why I heard that argument, but I would argue I'm doing less than they're doing by far.
Right.
Yeah, and that's what I noticed too, is because like when you put that magnet on there, they stop in the middle of the road, which is impeding traffic. And
which I also try to stop. Once they like are really stopping people from, like, there's 3-4 cars, I say, okay, get out of here. You're causing
one video.
further
like
problems.
I think that like them putting their cart away would take less time than it would for them to get out of their vehicle 5 times. And
What do you think about this though? Like, so let's say there's not a cart, what would you call it? Like a cart return.
Cart corral, yeah.
And it's like, I don't know, what is it? 50 or what's a good distance away from the cart? 100 feet?
Let's say, yeah, 100
mean?
feet's a good. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's 30 yards. Yeah.
So, what do you think of like? I mean, like, I know this does sound like I'm saying like it's laziness, but like it is 100 feet. But if you put it in a safe area, I don't know if there is a safe area, to be honest. But
I hear what you're saying. That's the thing that I also try to be conscious of. Is because I have busted some folks in a situation like what you're talking about, but that's only when they are parked like either in a separate parking, like a big shopping center, and they parked at the bank and they went to the grocery store, something like that.
Mhm.
Or they've proven that they can walk so much further and they're not even parked in the area where they're quote intended to have cart returns.
Right.
But most of my videos nowadays, I will start either in the cart return or right next to it, so that it's even, because that's like I talked about how this starts from you get little ideas as you do more repetitions of anything, right?
Right.
I said, well, if I start at the cart return, then it's super obvious because I've walked to where they are. And I'm typically just scrolling along, da-di-da-di-da, especially initially talking to people. So I hear what you're saying, and I try to eliminate as many reasons like that as possible these days.
Now, what came up with you're saying whoop 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 whoop?
Well, I was thinking like I need a siren of some kind, and you're not. It's technically illegal, to my understanding, to use actual emergency sirens.
Even if you
So I
say
said,
it like that, even if you do like whoop, whoop, whoop.
Well, like if you're like directly copying, like I'm sure it varies by jurisdiction, but like guys who do like they'll put blue lights in their car. You see these guys who pretend to be cops for whatever reason. I'm not like those guys. There are rules about impersonating a police officer. So I want it to be nothing like that, right?
Right. Okay.
It's like so I said, well, I don't want to, and some of those like megaphones have little sirens in them, like wah, wah.
Yeah.
But I said, well, I'll just do it with my mouth because it's silly, stupid, and it highlights how ridiculous they are when they take me so seriously when I'm being so ridiculous.
Right.
Another question that I have is, how was your experience on the Dr. Phil show, and like, how do you think you handled the discussion with him and the people that came on along with you?
Well, yeah, there's a lot that goes into that. They were very nice. Everybody on the staff was very nice, accommodating. There are people wanting to get photos and fans and all that stuff. That's great. They did give me ahead of time. Okay, we're going to bring this person on and these people on, and da, da, da. They kind of gave me like each segment. What are the people you're going to be talking to, essentially? They didn't say how much Dr. Phil would be like against me, but because my thought was like his deal was, he's like the straight talking, no nonsense. He's going to tell you to clean your room and listen to your mom and all that stuff. So for him to come out, and I get why he was against me, because if it was me and him, teaming up on people,
right?
It wouldn't look as good. He looked like a bully, but I felt like, because everything he said to me I'd heard before. It wasn't news to me. But he was very like, and I try to give as much like room to him as possible. It's his show. I'm here as his guest. I'm not going to try to talk over him or anything. He was very much trying to, railroad and steamroll his new points. I'd rebut the point, and then he would just ignore that. He'd say like, whatever it was, like, there's a lot bigger problems in carts out there, and then a stupid audience claps. And I said, well, okay, true. And how many of you all went to go to a soup kitchen this morning? Oh, you didn't, because you didn't care. You don't care that much about the bigger problems.
Right. Yeah.
And instead of sitting down on that point and saying, well, I guess that was a stupid point I made, he just moves on. He's got his, his list of things he's going to hit. So it's not like a long form discussion, like kind of like this. It's not that it's just long form, but not as much. It's more TV, and I get it. TV is more do. But he was polite to me, pleasant to me. All the staff were nice. So on that respect, I have no complaints.
And then how did you get to that level to go to? Did he reach you out, or how did that
Yeah.
happen?
One of his people emailed, and then they said, "Hey, we did a little they do like pre-interviews where they sit down and talk." Typically, I've never worked in TV production, but from my understanding is, because I did this recently for the Howard Stern show as well, is that one of their producers sits down and I'll do like what we're doing, like a video chat or whatever, and then they'll take that and they'll package it, they'll turn it into like a trailer essentially, 2 minutes, and then they show it to Dr. Phil and his executive producers and say, hey, here's the guy, here's some we got. With me, there's tons of video of what I do, so that's great for them because they can just say, "Oh, we got a huge highlight package. We got hours of footage we can pull from."
Yeah.
Right.
And then if the executive producer and or Dr. Phil typically says yay, then they bring you on and they try to build out, like you saw on the show, different segments, different people for me to talk to and things.
Yeah. All right. Do you have anything else?
I was gonna say, I've noticed in the town we live here, kind of in the Portland, Oregon area, kind of on the outskirts, St. Helens, Oregon, and I've noticed there's a lot of carts left out in bunches here. Would you ever be willing or think about coming to like St. Helens, Oregon, to try to stop the issue here?
Because I've been in and around Portland a handful of times. In fact, one of my favorite videos I did is where I landed at the Portland airport and there's a Target near there. And I had stopped, my hotel was right over there. So I'd stopped to like grab some snacks before I went to the hotel. And as I'm walking in, this shopping cart comes busting out the entrance door. And it was a shoplifter, these two women who were stealing. And unlike what you usually see, which is just some security guy looking at him, the guy there was like fighting him for the cart. So I was like, oh, I wasn't in uniform or anything. And so I jump in to like help him. I didn't actually grab him or anything. They were kind of far away from me.
Yeah.
But like because it's a cart related matter, I helped him pick things up because eventually what happened is he wouldn't let them go, and they like threw some stuff in the back of their truck and peeled out. And so I'm helping him. But like, see, I love that stuff. I love the things that are not just the cart, that are the little side missions like you'd have in I guess Grand Theft Auto 6 coming out soon, right?
Yeah.
But I love going to smaller towns at the outskirts of places because when I show up there and people, because they don't recognize me by my face, but they recognize no one else is wearing a uniform that says Cart Narcs. So they're like, oh, what the hell are you doing in, blah, 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 wherever, Maui or outside of Portland or any place. So that's super fun to like get those little places in there and not just have the big, because people know where the big cities are, but like the little places too are fun to do. So most certainly I'll be up for headed up that way.
And
Awesome.
And one thing that I have to say, so what are your thoughts on like homeless people taking the carts, or just not just homeless people, but just in general, people taking the carts and not giving them back? Is that an issue for you too, or no?
Well, I've busted a handful of people. I busted a handful of people who have like apartments or houses right by a shopping center. And they just decided that, well, I'm close enough, so I get to take some carts and leave them in the front yard. So I have busted a handful of people doing that. And they say, well, and there was this one lady in Australia where she put it in her garage. Like it was her cart now. These things are, they're minimum $150, if not more, typically.
Oh yeah, they're expensive. I was thinking about
and I'm sure the store would say, well, they don't give you you can't just take a piece of shelving from the store or the toilet paper dispenser from the store. But for some reason, people think they can take the shopping cart and just keep it.
Yeah.
So I do bust those people when I catch them. However, to the homeless issue, almost every city and state, that's illegal. However, is it enforced? Usually not. And that's kind of the thing with where I kind of step back on that a bit is, number one, it's not going to be I'm not going to be looked upon favorably if I do that by a certain percentage of the population.
Yeah.
Because like with the shopping cart thing, it's so universal, and I try to keep it apolitical. I just try to keep it like, you can take the cart back outside of the very rare exceptions we talked about. So I try to keep it other stuff that has, because the homeless issue in any city is enormous and has 1,000 different angles to it. So I try not to muddy the water with that.
Yeah.
Too much. Because people bring it up, and a lot of shopping carts here in California, a lot of them will have printed do not remove. This is a violation of California Penal Code, blah, 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 blah. Of course, people who take the cards don't care because they're not going to get arrested. But yeah, I try to just keep that off my radar because number one, it's an actual crime.
Yeah.
And number two, it opens a whole can of worms.
Right. It's like a gray area.
That confuses the issue. Yeah.
Yeah. My last question is going to be, besides the 2 times that you have had a gun pulled on you, what would you say is the craziest like altercation that you have encountered with somebody that didn't put their card away?
Well, the one that gets a lot of talk, and for rightly so, is I was in the Honolulu area in Hawaii, in Pearl City, at a Walmart, and this guy at first, so the guy at first is like yelling at me about putting the magnet on his car, and he gets out, and then his wife gets out and like walks around the lot with me. And this whole time, while again, I'm backing up the entire time from her.
Mm-hmm.
She's not going to hurt me. But this whole time you can hear the guy and eventually see the guy in the background, and he's talking himself up. He's working himself up. That's my wife. That's my wife. And I'm like, your wife is chasing me, number one. Number two, I'm not hurting your wife. But some guys, like, when it comes to the, wife or kids, they're not very smart, obviously, but they use it as a pivot or a wedge to say, like, well, because she or they are involved, therefore I can be as violent as I want to be because that I didn't insult your wife any more than I did you with lazy bones. I'm not attacking your wife, but they use that as a little like to give themselves carte blanche to hurt you. Yeah. He chased me he's a pretty fast little guy. Chased me into the Walmart because and I kind of dodged behind like a display, and he eventually left.
That's crazy.
And I found out, so I tagged. Well, here's the fun part of that is I found out later because I got tagged in something on Instagram, and it was some kind of MMA fight gym in Honolulu, in Oahu, in Oahu, and it was his picture and my picture on like a mock-up fight thing, like you'd see for the tail of the tape, right? This guy's an amateur, or was, to my understanding, an amateur MMA fighter.
Oh, so, no.
Let's bring this back to MMA. So look, I do a little bit, but like I don't compete, because I don't want the brain damage. But I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with that. And I Googled his name, and some other unsavory things came up about him in his past as well. But he certainly had the desire and the capability to at least try to hurt me quite badly. But again, stayed out of his range as best I could, and it ended up saving my beans.
Now, what's the most stores that you go to? Like, what's your go-to?
Well, I mean, Walmart's always the easiest because it's the biggest and it's everywhere, and there's just a lot of volume, a lot of foot traffic, so there's a lot of people. But when I am in different areas, I try to go to typically like the local grocery store. So for like, let's say for you guys, Shaw's, I'm trying to think.
Local would be more
Fred Meyer.
Fred Meyer's, yeah.
Yeah, so like Fred Meyer's isn't everywhere. It's just in your area. Down here, that's Ralph's. Other places, it's Kroger, Winn-Dixie, Food Lion,
Safeway or whatever.
Wegmans, yeah. And Kroger owns a bunch of those too. I think they, anyway. But so I try to hit up those places. Like if I am on a trip, I will try to hit the Smiths in Las Vegas or the Fred Meyer's in Portland and Washington and all that area. But yeah, Walmart's always the easiest because it's always there and it's always huge and it's always full of people.
Now, do you ever have problems with Walmart? Because you always hear or see on YouTube that they don't like recording or anything. Do you ever have problems with recording?
No, because I always keep it public. That's sort of a thing that I didn't necessarily know all the time, all the rules ins and outs of, but any place where you're on a side, like I'm not, it's difference between legal and polite and trespassing, essentially. Like I'm in a very public place. I'm not sticking a camera in someone's face,
right?
Which people have accused me of. It's literally, it's 3 inches from my face, in fact. But on top of that, I'm not goading them into committing to doing something wrong. They've done something, mildly to whatever degree you like it or don't like it wrong. And I'm simply giving them the opportunity And then you can say, well, he's goading them with the magnets a little bit. Yeah, obviously, I'm giving them a reason to talk to me some more.
Well, and they're
But
free.
in no way am I forcing. Yeah, in no way am I forcing them to talk to me. You see that in some videos where people they just ignore me and drive off. In which case, I'm like, okay, well, that's your choice. But now to your point is I could be asked to this is private property. I could be asked to leave. The recording isn't an issue there because I'm not. This is another side route note here, but when it comes to like people putting logos in videos or companies in videos, you have to show like let's say movies or television.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be using that logo or portraying that company in an uncharacteristically unfair and damaging way. So like I'm just in a Walmart parking lot. People are doing Walmart things. I don't say, "Hey, Walmart's the only place where people do this because they encourage their grocery, their people
Right.
to hit other."
Mhm.
Right. I'm not disparaging Walmart or anywhere, Home Depot. Who cares
You're
where
just
else?
there.
I'm just there,
Mm.
and people are acting normally as they would. So yes, they can ask me to leave. Some places do, but the majority of employees are super cool and they want to come and say hi and do whatever.
Oh,
But I think that kind of is what you're saying there.
yeah.
All right. I have one more thing to add that I remembered. So I've watched many of your videos, and I've seen some of them where the people call you out for harassing them. And in my mind, I felt like they're free to leave at any point. I feel like you're not holding them there. But what would you say to people that think that you're harassing these people by
Right.
telling
Well,
them?
that's a term that gets thrown around, like you said, a lot, and it's people don't. They have a very loose definition of harassment. The law does not have a loose definition of harassment. In fact, I sat down with a Texas lawyer at one point, and he kind of talked about how just Google people who get arrested for harassment, and it is people who are stalking. It is persistent and long term, like if you're blaring music at your neighbor intentionally over the course of months, or throwing stuff on their yard over the course, and they told you no, and you're doing it for no good reason other than you just don't like a person. Um, but my conversations and magnets, I admit, are intentional, with a clear and stated purpose, that is in my mind and in most people's minds, by the way, for the public good. Um, so if I were to follow them to their house and stand outside there, and scream at a megaphone at midnight, yeah, you could call that harassment. But what I do is, and you see that a lot, people scream, and I'll say to them, "You don't know what that word means," and they'll say, "Well, yeah, I do." So having a conversation with you, well, no, it's not. But like you said, they could leave at any time, and
Right.
so that's
Yeah.
there are a lot of armchair lawyers out there, and they are wrong.
All right. Well, that's all I got. Do you have anything?
No, I don't
else?
have anything to say. I mean, like,
So you guys aren't in Vegas for the fight?
no.
No, probably just gonna watch it. Yeah.
It's not that far. It's what, 3 hours, 3 hours from where you guys are by a
Yeah.
plane.
Oh yeah.
It's interesting. Yeah, I got a friend of mine at work who's a big fan, and she's like got all these press passes and stuff, and she loves Alex Pereira, right? He's the big.
Yeah.
Oh
He's
yeah.
the big guy.
I assume he's favored tonight, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He's favored pretty good.
Yeah, it's funny. I wish I could share the one person who's John. Well, there's two people in the UFC who are fans of Cart Narcs: John Jones, and George St. Pierre a few years ago put a video out where he was like, and he's in his super thick, Quebecois accent, and he was in a shopping cart. He's like, "What is with these people? I did not understand. They cannot take the cart back. You are so lazy." So I don't know if he know. I don't think he knew about me at the time. But I think the UFC is a big crossover because you don't get to be great you can't luck into being great in the UFC. You can't be anyone's kid, and you have to
Right.
be not only a physical badass, but you have to have decade plus of training and so on and so forth. So I think those guys are big on get your crap done, don't leave the mat sweaty, all this, because Cart Narcs philosophy goes to, put your weights back in the gym, et cetera, et cetera. What do the coaches say? Touch the line if you're doing laps, you don't get ahead in life by cutting corners in obvious ways like these lazy bones do. So I think there's a big crossover with a lot of UFC people.
Now, do you sell merch?
Only because people ask for it. I make like literally pennies on the dollar, and that's just to cover like processing and taxes. That's all at cartnarcs.com. And because people ask for it and they're like, "Hey, how can I get a t-shirt?" And I was like, "Well, I'll set up like a what are those what do they call them? Like somebody else handles everything.
Oh,
like
a manager or whatever.
Yeah, or no, that's like there's like companies online that
it's like the third party.
Oh, okay.
Right. It's all third party fulfillment, but I don't make, like, that was one of the things they brought up on Dr. Phil. I was like, well, you sell merch. I'm like, I make almost no money off of it. In fact, I used to just donate it all to charity, but I just took the margin down even slimmer so that it just covers shipping, hosting the website, and that's it. So if you want to get some, you can, cartnarcs.com, but I try not to make people pay for Cart Narcs. It's a public service, and that's the way it should be.
And then one thing, I promise this is the last thing I think. Is there any interesting or there might be two. How many celebrities did you meet from doing this? And then who's your favorite?
Not a ton.
Because when I saw on a video, and I don't what was it? I don't know his what is it? Malcolm in the Middle, the guy.
Oh, Frankie Muniz. Yeah.
Did you actually
see
get to meet
there
him?
are some not in person. I haven't hit him up to join. That's really should be like the next level of, if we ever do like a full show, we'll get like people to book these guys. Because there are a handful of folks who are, I know, like if you know Jerry O'Connell, he was on a bunch of shows back in the day and movies, but he hosts like Match Game and The Talk and all that stuff. He wants me to go out with him. I just haven't pulled the trigger on it. And then, like I said, John Jones, I probably could get him. He commented on some video years ago, and he still follows me on Instagram, so I could probably DM him. He's probably busy now that he's like championing me.
Yeah.
he had his downside. He had his down few years. Maybe I'll get him in a few years when he's done fighting.
Yeah.
But then like Whitney Cummings, the comedian, is a fan, because she was doing it. She was calling people out, but then like, oh, you got to watch Cart Narcs, and I talked to her about that. I DM'd Bubbles from Trailer Park Boys, and he was into it at first, but he seemed like a little. I think more he saw it, he's like, oh man, I don't want to get in trouble, So there's been some folks. Mark Norman said no because he does like a cop skit, but I think he's a little too famous for, at least for now. Or I think a lot of people just don't want to. They get. I'm not putting us on any one of those people, but they get a little spooked because like there are potentially weapons and fists involved. But like if I had an actual production crew with me, we'd have bodyguards and stuff, to keep them safe, obviously. So I don't know. It comes up a lot, but I haven't really pulled the trigger on having and Andy Milonakis is a fan for whatever that's worth.
Yeah.
he was like busted his dad or something in one of his videos. It was so I'm sure I could get those folks. I just haven't really. I've been kind of lazy about. Speaking of laziness, I just haven't really gotten around to it, I guess.
Okay.
All right. Well, yeah, that'll do it. Everybody, make sure to go on YouTube and
like and subscribe to Cart Narc.
Yeah, find the Cart Narc on there.
Freaking Tony Hinchcliffe is a fan, but he's kind of a weasel. But he mentioned it on the Joe Rogan podcast. He might be too rich and famous now too.
Oh, yeah.
He mentioned it on Joe Rogan's podcast, and I think Joe wasn't a fan. He didn't get it or wasn't a fan of it. But
well, he did. I thought I saw it somewhere that he said he was a fan because he was like calling, or who, I don't know who it was. I don't know if it was him or someone else. He was saying that calling people out to being lazy or something. I don't know if it was him.
Yeah, it came up earlier on his show, but then
probably changed his mind.
Tony brought it up, separately in reference to me. I know what you're talking about. So yeah, I don't know if. See, it's a weird, like you have to find like that sweet spot of celebrity who either just doesn't care, or isn't so famous anymore, so that they won't be, because they don't want to be a distraction either. I get it. But anyway, I'm up for doing that because I've had a few like friends and stuff hang out with me a couple of times doing it. So it's definitely doable to do it, pairs or whatever, or trios.
Now, is this true that you made a film or a short film on YouTube, or is that just a hoax?
A short film about what?
YouTube about the Cart Narc, about the carts.
Well, I've done there was a film done years ago called like Carts of Darkness, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. Is that?
Yeah, that was like I watched a long time ago, but that was like something like some kids. It was like a skate video or something with like these kids with like. Yeah, well, it's not related to me, but I get that sent. Anything cart related, I get sent to me.
So that wasn't you, though.
No, that was prior to me. That's
okay.
I think it was just in like the local cart scene or wherever that guy was.
Yeah.
But no, I've done little featurettes for different like video magazines and stuff.
Do you
But
ever
no,
think
we've
that
never.
you're going to make a movie about this or a short film, or what do you think that?
It's possible to like package it in a different way, where it is more in like a narrative thing. So that's on the table, but nothing planned as of this moment.
Have you made a book about this or just not?
Well, actually, it's funny. I am considering that as well. There's a book called, I think it's called The Bad Seed. I'm gonna double check that right now. And it's basically it's a kid's book,
Oh, I've heard of
but
it.
it's just
Okay.
so the idea is this bad seed does antisocial things, and one of the things in the book even is leaving shopping carts out because people have sent me little photos of that, and
Okay.
there's a whole series of these books. So it would probably be something along those lines. Obviously,
You would think
I
it
don't want
would
to
be a
steal.
kid's book, or would it be like more of a novel?
Oh, I think a novel would be very boring.
Yeah.
But I think like a comic book, but that's sort of tongue in cheek and
So
fun.
you'd be
I
more
think
of the
is doable.
superhero, or would you be the villain? What would you do?
Well, I would hope the
You'd be the
superhero, but
superhero.
like if you look at because we do animations, we do these little animations that
Oh, that's cool.
that are like they're designed to be parodies of the GI Joe animations in the '80s. Which, for folks who don't know, at the end of every GI Joe cartoon show, there was a little 30-second PSA that said like stuff like take your cart back. So we did that, or I do that in with different like excuses that people use. Like here's the excuse they use. Here's why it's wrong.
Yeah.
Boom, that's it. So that's I would think a book would be along those lines. It'd be kind of
Something
it'd
simple
look
like
like a
that.
kid's book, right? Look like a kid's book, but it'd have adult messages and humor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that would be cool.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Thanks.
That is cool. Actually, it's cool to hear your perspective than, just having like for me just thinking, oh, what is this about? Like, why is he doing this? And just overthinking it. And it's good to have a perspective of the person who's actually doing it instead of just coming up with things in your head.
Oh, for sure. And like that's the thing too, is like a lot of people will, they'll especially the day of YouTube is they'll do a whole like YouTube reaction video, and they don't do like the most basic thing of journalism, which is not that you guys are journalists necessarily, but that
Right.
and not that you aren't either, but like hey, why don't we just ask them what they think? It's super easy.
Yeah.
And I just emailed you that George St. Pierre video. It should be super short, so
Oh,
it's
cool.
Okay, thank you.
yeah. But I don't have the proper technical setup to share it on my screen. But if you guys want it, it was just like an Instagram story of his from a while ago, where so
All
he
right.
was just pissed about because again, the Cart Narc, the idea of that carts being left out is bad is not my idea. I mean, like I said, I'm just the vehicle through which enforcement is met.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. This was very really fun to listen to your side of the story.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks, guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
All right, thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.